Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'll give you all a firewood season wrap-up episode. We finished everything yesterday, at least the new stuff. It ended up being, well, between the two piles, I factored all the math. Senior and I, we estimate with, I think, a certain degree of accuracy, 5.3 cords in this first pile that we made right here. And then we finished off the rest of the big log pile over there. Decided to shoot the other pile in the gap where we were kind of splitting and processing before. Senior originally wanted to keep this gap open to be able to run the tractor down to clear snow in order to access those other piles easier. And over the course of several days, we talked about it, and we decided instead of wedging the rest of them kind of in on this corner in a couple smaller piles, we had enough to warrant making another big one in this alley. So that's what we did. And this one ended up being the second pile, about 3.5 cords. So, I mean, I'll just figure we're a solid 8.5 cords of wood between the two piles that we made this year. And we got everything cleaned up that we had staged for firewood logs. We just have these basswoods here that we mostly had laid down for piling on. We're not using those for firewood. They're kind of a negative yield log. There's very little heat value in it, so we just leave that stuff. But yeah, the reason why we were going so hard and making so much firewood in one shot was, you can tell from the bark on the ground back here, we had several pretty good oaks at the back of the pile here that we had not got to the last couple of years, and they were ready. You can tell by all the white stuff and the peeling bark. We peeled the majority of the bark, left the mess right here, and we're starting over with a clean slate. The last couple of firewood seasons, we've been only working as far back into the log pile as we needed to go to get a sufficient supply to keep the 2-year dry cycle chain going. This year we decided those backlogs had been there long enough. Even if we put up more than we usually do, it's time to get it all at least in the pile before it goes bad. So that's what we did. So now we're doing the opposite. We're pulling firewood out for a change, as opposed to stacking fresh in. Here's our 2-year season piles right here. I've got the first load in the truck. This is going to be plenty enough to get everything staged behind the house and behind the old shop where Senior usually works. We run 2 stoves with this stuff, and we estimate our firewood consumption. Now that I'm here full-time, that's kind of relocated Senior out into the old shop more. So we're firing the old shop almost every day, all day. We don't heat that overnight, but the house, there's someone around enough where we're running the wood stove, well, all day, every day. And well, it starts pretty early in the morning and it goes pretty late at night. And the firebox usually never cools off. So between firing those 2 buildings, we're probably going to use about 5 cords of wood this winter. And of course, our winters are about 6 months long. So lots of interesting comments under the last episode. I knew there was going to be quite a few because, well, not everyone does firewood the same. We have our niche pretty well figured out to where the process that we use now and the dimensions, the sizes that we cut and split wood are the most efficient for us. I mentioned that in the first episode. I want to talk a little bit today now about why we process the wood into the sizes that we do. And of course we have, I mentioned, just those smaller radiant heat stoves, and we found that this size, this dimension of firewood is the most efficient for our application. But as I suspected, the comment section did not disappoint. I still got, for firewood, that's cut too small. It's a step or 2 above kindling. I've burned firewood since the 70s, and you need big chunks or big rounds for a long burn. That goes back to everyone has a different setup and different requirements. Our stoves are not made for large pieces of wood. Hence why I said in the last video, this size, this dimension of firewood is the most efficient for our application. So the 16-inch length is perfect for our fireboxes, and it just so happens that 3/16 across a 4-foot pallet fills up a 4-foot pallet just perfectly. But for actual like split size, this is about as big as you want to go for the 2 stoves that we have. We are custom tailoring the size of our firewood to the size of the wood stoves that we currently run, and there is another added benefit to having smaller chunks of wood. With aging parents, they can move smaller chunks of wood a lot easier than bigger chunks if I'm not around to be hauling in firewood or keeping the stoves going. And Yeah, I mentioned in the first one, we don't run outdoor wood boilers. We don't really have the requirements to justify the startup cost. And yeah, there's big pluses to having everything outside and you're not bringing the fire in. The mess stays outside. On the flip side, we would burn more wood than we're burning here. And well, when you're doing firewood, it's to try and save money, not to spend more money. This is kind of our niche that fits our requirements. I know other people's wood stoves are set up to build much larger, set up to burn much larger pieces of wood than what we burn here. We're not set up for that. And this consumption rate with this size of wood, it also kind of matches the natural attrition rate of the trees on our property. So just between cleaning up blowdown and taking care of over mature trees before they come down and maybe crash on something, it usually keeps pace pretty well every year with what our wood requirements are. So very happy with the setup that we have right now, the style of wood processing that we do, and the equipment that we currently run. On the topic of equipment, a lot of people talked about you need to get like a multiple prong wedge, so you're doing a 4-axis cut or a 6-axis split every time. No, that would not be beneficial to us at all. Well, I shouldn't say most, I'd say half of the chunks we process, and I saved this maple chunk just for this answer because from the start that multiple wedge splittering thing started coming up in the comments. But probably 50% of the things we split are full of knots and twists and turns and just ugly like that, and our single wedge splitter already grunts plenty hard getting through pieces like this. Multiple wedges would just they'd slow us down more than anything. Now the senior has his band mill up and running, well, that took even more of the clean straight grain stuff out of the equation. So more and more of the stuff we split is trashy by comparison. Never did get around to doing an operation video on this one this year, and he's actually got it ready to pick right off of here and take the whole power head and saw unit and store it in the pole barn for the winter. But he's been doing a lot of oak sawing, and here's a pile of like specific quarter sawn oak that he's been trying to do, and it's actually been turning out really well. He's got some very nice oak lumber in there. So yeah, the clean straight grain stuff that a multiple wedge would love, yeah, that doesn't make it into our wood piles. Another question, someone asked if we're just throwing the pallets down on the ground, just flat down to sacrifice them just to save the wood, or if we're throwing something under the pallets. Now that we have Senior's band mill going, we are throwing slab wood beneath all the pallets. You can see there's a piece of it right there, pallets on top of that. It just gives us a barrier between. That one's easier to see right there, slab wood on the ground so the pallet's not flat down. That's a good barrier right there to help the pallets last a little bit longer. And speaking of this pile that I just pulled wood out of over here, this was put in place before Senior had the band mill running. You can see where I just pulled the pallet up a few minutes ago, where it had been directly on the ground. This one's directly on the ground. Yeah, I think we're gonna like that slab wood beneath the pallets a lot better, because as it gets colder, these pallets are gonna freeze right to the ground and be stuck down tight. So as we chew back on this pile of wood, month or two into winter, we're not gonna be able to pick those pallets up anymore, because more of them would stay on the ground than would come up. So we've just had to kind of battle around them best we can until spring, and the ground finally thaws, we can pick them all back up. And we're digging way back into the archives for this next one, but a lot of people asked why we don't run a buzz saw with the tractors and belt pulleys that we have here. Here is the old buzz saw. Yeah, we've got one. And we take the blade off it for storing. Open the door real quick, let some light in. Yeah, last time I took it off, I propped it up on the purling here behind the post in the pole barn, but that is the saw blade that we used to run on that. And the whole thing bolted directly to the front of the Farmall H. It used these top two rail bolts on each side, plus where this third bolt is in the bolster. There and there, those were the forwardmost attaching points. And it was powered with a short flat belt right off of the belt pulley drive. And one person would feed the logs into the saw, the other one would catch the cutoffs as they left. And we could really burn through the smaller logs, like anything 6 inches diameter and smaller. that buzzsaw would make really quick work of all of that stuff. We have not used it for a while now though, because almost 5 years ago, Senior had a ladder kick out from under him, and he fell from about 12 feet up and landed on the ladder and fractured vertebrae in his lower back and everything else. Thankfully nothing permanent, but he is going to be dealing with ongoing issues from that from here on out. So that took, you know, one of the two people out of the equation to run that buzzsaw. So basically the bulk of the cutting and heavy lifting is just me now, and yeah, just by myself. It's easier for me to use a chainsaw even on those smaller pieces than it is to try and navigate that buzzsaw just one person. So also a lot of suggestions about extending the table on the splitter. We covered the multiple wedge thing. It even went as far as conveyors and log lifts, and that for me would completely negate any benefit, any cost savings I would get out of making firewood. Just the time invested into making all that stuff or purchasing it, and we're certainly not going to a firewood processor. I just as soon buy heating oil for decades and decades and probably still come out ahead cost-wise rather than fooling with firewood if we're going to put that kind of investment in it. So I don't mind the physical aspect of it. Bending, lifting, twisting has never bothered me. I can go all day long. I get tired, but I never hurt. Good night's rest. I'm ready to do it all day again the next day for as many days as it takes to get done. We did 8 days straight here. We're still fine. I really enjoy it. I like just the being outside, you know, just doing the firewood stuff. If any logs or any rounds are too big on the ground for me to lift, I just pop them with the maul, start splitting them in half until they become manageable. Easy as that. So we've got a good firewood stockpile at the house, as well as a good start for Senior at the back of the old shop. We just kind of stacked around Great Grandpa's old F12. That's kind of the firewood rack. I think we even threw some down beneath it too, but handy to get at under the lean-to back here. So here's our answer. How much firewood can we make in just a week? Turns out it was 8 days, 8.5 cords, and this is the last you all are going to see of firewood for this year. All this stuff is in the pile. We'll finish off this one to here. Next few trees we have to take out, and we'll work on those other two for the winter. So I do like firewood season. I just enjoy being outside. I enjoy the type of work and the exercise you get, and it's just a really nice feeling having all this stuff wrapped up, done, and in the pile well before the snow even hit the ground this year. So thanks for watching, everybody. On to other things.